Mr. Beacon podcast is sponsored by Wiliot, scaling IoT with battery-free Bluetooth.
Well, welcome back to the Mr. Beacon podcast. This week we're interviewing Bob Friday, who is the co-founder and CTO of Mist. Bob, welcome back to the show.
Thanks to be here, Steve, as always.
Yeah, so I think last time you were with us was a year and a half ago. So if anyone wants kind of the baseline of what you're doing at Mist, then they can go back to that. And of course, before Mist, you were at Cisco. You were a CTO of Enterprise Mobility, which is, basically the wife. What is Enterprise Mobility at Cisco?
Yeah, so back when I left Cisco, Enterprise Mobility was kind of the wireless switch routing group. Was all put together in one group, and we were basically in the transition of converging wireless was becoming mainstay and actually converging with all the switch router functions.
Okay, then you went off and you set up Mist, and Mist is certainly was working with Cisco last time we spoke. So here's the things that I think it'd be great to talk with you about in just a few minutes. One is, let's get an update on how things are going at Mist and baseline what you guys are doing. You now have customers that are going into production, so I think it'd be really cool. You've got a couple that I would love to talk about, if you can talk about them. You've done some work for Disney, the Swan and Dolphin Resort out in Florida, and also the Orlando VA. So it's always good to talk about real deployments, lessons learned, what you've done. So let's talk about that. And kind of the third topic I'd love to cover is your view of where the Bluetooth ecosystem is. There's been a lot of controversy and naysaying and optimism as well. So let's get your view on that. But first of all, for those people that didn't watch the original episode, can you explain to us what does Mist do?
Yeah, so Mist is really on like two missions right now. The first mission is really around what I call Jeopardy wireless Jeopardy, right? And this is really around trying to build a solution that can answer questions on par with a wireless network expert. And for those who remember kind of Watson and Jeopardy, right, when they built a solution that could actually play Jeopardy, that was kind of one of the inspirations for Mist. If they can build software that can play Jeopardy, we should be able to build software that can play wireless Jeopardy, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's one mission that Mist is on. The other mission that we've been on is kind of this bringing indoor location on par with GPS. And this is a mission that dates back to my aerospace Cisco days of always trying to get the industry, can we agree on something that, when we open up our phones, it works just like GPS. And that's what got us into the BLE. Because when I looked at indoor location, there was always friction points for why people were having a hard time adopting it, right? Whether it was the overlay network, right? The indoor location kind of always required that. Mm-hmm. So I think we're solving that problem with the convergence at Mist, right? We are converging Wi-Fi and BLE together. Wi-Fi is no longer a nice to have, it's a must have. So people don't argue about deploying Wi-Fi anymore.
Yeah, that seems to be like now standard operating procedure is for the big guys at least. You buy a Wi-Fi router, you get Bluetooth radio in there. And typically it's kind of fairly basic radio. What do you guys do that's different from just simply having a Bluetooth radio with a Wi-Fi access point?
Yeah, so I think, when it comes to BLE, I would say Mist is kind of best of breed. I mean, we've done two major things. One is we've kind of virtualized this whole BLE beacon. And that's what we were known for. That was one of our first patents of really taking the whole battery beacon problem and make it easier to use. Probably the second big thing we've done is really around leveraging machine learning to actually learning the path loss model, right, to get better accuracy, right? And this is really something I've always wanted to do since my aerospace days. I've never had the opportunity to do it. But now with all the compute and storage power we get at AWS, there's really no limit beyond my Amazon bill of what we can do now. So that problem we've actually solved now, where we can actually learn this path loss model for every AP and every device. So that's probably the other big thing we brought into the table.
So what does path loss model mean? Is that the kind of the decay of the signal over space? So you kind of get a better correlation between the signal strength and the position? Is it?
Yep. I mean, do you remember the equation for a line from your high
I've got it in the book somewhere, but you'll do a better job of explaining it than me.
That's your classic y equals mx plus b, right?
Yeah.
And, what you're trying to learn is how fast that RSSI is dropping with distance.
Yes, and
So
it's not a straight line. That's the key thing that we talk about in the Beacon Technology book. And so it's not a question of just understanding a standard curve. It varies from place to place. Is that why you need AI in there?
Yeah, because for anyone who's worked on RSSI based location, that curve changes depending on where you are, and it changes for every device, right? There's a difference between an Android and an iPhone, especially on the intercept, right? How well they actually hear the BLE signals.
Okay.
So that varies across all your devices.
So you've got machine learning there, but it sounds like, is there machine learning elsewhere in your offering? You were talking about kind of the Jeopardy Watson model. Is it just purely on the location piece, or is it more than that?
Yeah, if you look at on the Wi-Fi side, the reason that Wi-Fi and BLE go better together is Wi-Fi has kind of become this industry standard for connectivity, right? And you look at BLE is starting to become the industry standard for your location use cases. Mm-hmm. And when you look at our customers who are actually putting these use cases on top of their wireless network, these are critical services now that kind of require better visibility on the end-to-end user experience, right? So it's one thing why I tell people, it's one thing back in the old days when we had unhappy employees on your Wi-Fi network. It's a whole different thing. We have an unhappy customer. And so that's where the Wireless for Jeopardy Marvis AI piece comes in, is really helping customers get complete end-to-end visibility on a customer's connectivity experience, right? Because if you're going to put a location-based app on someone's phone, it's not going to be a very good experience if they don't have good connectivity. I mean, you have to have good connectivity and good location to get that whole experience to work right.
And how can AI help improve the connectivity? I can see why it could help understand this path loss, but it actually helps make sure the pipe is flowing better?
Yeah, it basically, I would say the paradigm shift is, back in my aerospace days, 15 years ago, that was all about really helping enterprise IT manage a whole bunch of access points. Where AI is helping is really starting to provide that end-to-end visibility from the actual user device all the way to the internet.
Okay.
Right. So it's no longer good enough when someone says, hey, why is your experience bad? Usually IT is struggling with trying to figure out, is it on the client? Is it on the AP? Is it on the network? Or is it in the internet somewhere? Right. So AI is starting to bring all that information together. And it's something that, a regular person does manually, right? But it usually will take an IT guy maybe hours, if not days, depending on how complicated the problem is. And that is where really we're leveraging the same way they did for, Watson for Jeopardy. We're really going through terabytes of data very quickly. And that's what computers are good for, right? They're going through terabytes of data looking for correlations and similarities. And that's where AI is starting to make a difference in the networking world.
So you're parsing through, you're sifting through huge amounts of data that gives you a sense of where the performance problems are. And how do you resolve those issues that you spot?
Yeah, so it depends on what type of problem you actually see. If it's an RF problem, we can actually adjust those ourselves, right? If it's some sort of channel power interference problem. If it turns out it's a DNS or DHCP problem, in some cases we can correct it if we have access to the servers. And we're actually working with some of our partners, right, in what we call AI for IT. So if we identify a problem in a firewall or a router or switch, can we actually start sending messages back to the router switch to get things corrected? A typical use case would be something like a config, right? Someone changes the config in a switch, and really the action you want to take is you want to roll back, right? You identify that the upgrade has gone bad, and you basically want to roll back to the previous one.
Okay, that makes sense. So I mentioned we spoke a year and a half ago. What have you guys been doing for the last 18 months?
Yeah, I think, if what I would say if I look at my BLE effort, and I've always called this kind of moving from a nice to have to a must have, we've been getting increasingly more and more use cases, from our customers, right? And so I think last year we talked about the Orlando, what we're seeing in hospitality. Mm-hmm. So we're working with companies like Turnout Now. These are the guys who put the little tag. If you ever go to the conference and you see the little BLE tag on the back of your thing.
Yeah.
That's almost become common now. it's hard to go to a conference now where they don't put a BLE tag on the back of your tag to actually track you through the conference and the event. So we're working closely with that. That's starting to emerge out there. The wayfinding use cases are starting to emerge where, we're starting to see more and more people build mobile apps that want to have a more immersive wayfinding experience. We just won a large airline customer last year. So they're starting to look at use cases such as, hey, if you're in the VIP lounge and you want to get the, you're late for your plane, you want to basically do the Uber help, you want to get the cart to get you from the lounge back to the thing. So we're starting to see that become more reality. I think one of the general themes we're seeing across all the verticals right now is kind of this concept of Uber help, right? Whether it's in retail, healthcare, the concept of, hey, someone needs help. And this is particular what we're doing down in the VAs for vets right now is, if a vet is in a wheelchair or on crutches and need help, how do we make it easier for them to get help when they emerge, when they get to the hospital?
Yeah, because hospitals are starting to be judged based on their performance and the user experience at the hospital. And I think we've all been to places where they need help to help us better. So that's great. So you basically can ask for assistance, and because you have you have better antenna technology, you're using this AI, you can spot where the person is in situations where there's more ambiguity. What are you guys doing with the Disney resort there, the Swan and Dolphin?
Yeah, so the Swan and Dolphin is where we're doing the event planner. So that's I mentioned turn on now, right? That is where they're looking to try to monetize location-based services. So that's where we're leveraging our virtual beacon technology and the machine learning, right, to help better locate both the asset, right, that tag, that beacon on the back of your tag, and that's where we're starting to leverage the phone, getting people from A to B in a large conference room. I would say in the VA, the healthcare in general, for people who are familiar with healthcare is always an early adopter of these type of technologies. There's a big trend in healthcare right now where they're looking to BLE as kind of a standards-based horizontal technology, similar to Wi-Fi, to really complement all their existing proprietary IR ultrasound technologies. And that's what's really opening up a whole nother set of use cases in the healthcare space. And I think the bigger thing is, BLE and location is kind of classically really resonates with the B2C, anybody who has a business that's trying to service a customer. But I think probably the more important thing for me is I'm starting to see is even the carpeted enterprise customers are starting to show an interest in BLE, right? These are like your mainstay financial customers, corporate enterprise, corporate campuses, where they're starting to look at BLE as kind of their facilities management, right? As they move to open space, they want better visibility on how their employees are actually using the space, right? Because once you go to open space, people naturally select where they want to be. And so you start to see strange behavior where certain parts of the building don't get used for some reason, and they're sort that out.
Well, so you have this sophisticated antenna structure for BLE. You're applying this extra analytical layer. But it seems like there's kind of two ways BLE can be used with your product. One is you have tags that you're spotting that are attached to assets. And the other one is you're kind of generating, you flip it on its head, and there's an iBeacon event that is being sent to someone's phone. So the first one, there may not be a phone involved at all. The second one, there's an app on someone's phone that you're triggering something based on. And the virtual beacon concept, as I understand it, is you have a dashboard which may be of a huge open space, and rather than having to send some guys out with step ladders to move stuff around, you basically just click on the map and say, here's where I want the triggers to be. Is that a reasonable summary of what the two sides are, or feel free to correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the use cases, we're seeing, there's the wayfinding use case of, someone has an app on their phone. There's the asset where we actually listen to beacons, try to locate assets and abilities. There's probably a third use case emerging around IoT, where BLE is starting to become kind of an IoT standard, right? Where a hospital like NYU may actually have, hand washing dispensers that are all BLE enabled, right? And they're starting to use BLE to keep track of, when the liquid needs to be replaced. So those are where you're starting to see BLE starting to become kind of your wayfinding, your asset visibility, and your IoT standard in an enterprise business now.
Yes. Well, I think I'm hearing a lot of this asset tracking. I'm hearing a lot about this hand cleaning thing. It's very critical for medicals. But the thing that you guys are doing, which is very unusual, is this virtual beacon piece. Is that getting traction? Where have you found people need a virtual beacon versus asset tracking, which is, if you can do that more accurately, that's great. But I'm interested in the virtual beacon bit.
So the virtual beacon, that actually started in the retail space. That is where, you look at a retail store where they have to basically change up their marketing or their planet, where they put the products. That's where we actually started the virtual beacon. Is they found that they had to move those beacons around every time they changed the store layout or the marketing program. That was the original use case for virtual beacons. Some of the more interesting ones we're seeing now is even in the theme parks, right? Especially around augmented reality, right? When you look at augmented reality, like in a grocery store, where they have visions of someone walking down the aisle and using their phone to actually augment what's on the display shelf, there you need enough virtual beacon to kind of understand where the person is in that store. So that's another use case where people are using virtual beacons to kind of roughly locate where someone is in an aisle. Probably the more interesting third ones I've had lately has been even the theme parks, visualize a room with a Mist infrastructure where you can change find the Pokemon, right? You have different game formats where you could basically put virtual beacons anywhere in a warehouse with kind of an augmented reality experience, right? And you have to basically work your way through a maze, and you can basically change that maze up for different game formats.
Fantastic.
So those are examples where virtual beacons are actually starting to see traction now.
Yeah, so you have a store reset, as they call it, where they move the shelves around. Last thing you want to do is to get the guys that deal with technology involved on the ground, and so many examples where those spaces are dynamic. So okay, I think we've covered a lot. We'll wrap it up in just a minute. I guess actually one of the things that I should have done earlier is just disclose we do have a common investor, Norwest, in Wiliot. The first time I spoke to you, I didn't work for Wiliot, so my interest in what you do has got nothing to do with the fact that we have a common investor. But I do get to hear things are going very well for you guys. I think there's been, it's really interesting with the Beacon ecosystem. I kind of sense a little bit of negativity that things aren't going well, and that business is not good and beacons were a fad. What's your view on that?
Yeah, so I'm still a big believer in BLE. For me, when you look at indoor location, BLE is a key component of kind of removing one of the friction points. Because if you look at indoor location, like I said, the friction points have really been around the overlay network. That typically and to some extent, battery beacons are an overlay network, and that's why there's friction and resistance to that. So we're solving that problem with converging Wi-Fi and BLE together. The other problem with indoor location has always been the survey. It's always required a lot of surveying to actually get it up and running. The machine learning piece of that is taking that piece of the friction out of the point. And probably the third biggest friction we've had in the industry is really around, what is Google, Apple, what are our mobile devices really going to support? What indoor location technology are we going to see them adopt? Mm-hmm. For me, BLE has become that. Wi-Fi, we looked at Wi-Fi originally, right? The industry and Wi-Fi location never really got there, right? It never really got to the performance level. And some of that's because the mobile device operators really never embraced Wi-Fi as a location technology. I think we're seeing that with BLE. I think Google, Apple are starting to embrace BLE as kind of that location technology. Especially, I don't know if you kept track of the BLE 5.1 spec coming down the pipe, right?
I have. Very interesting. So what's in there that you think is of note?
Now, I think, of note is the AOA and AOD, right?
Angle of arrival, angle of departure.
Right.
Yeah. Big fan, yeah.
Right, and we're going to see better location technology. Now, I think we're all waiting to see what Apple does. Is Apple going to embrace it?
Yes.
But, that is just another, okay, guys, we were going to see a much better location technology get into our phones here, hopefully with BLE 5.1. So I think that's another data point on, are we going to see BLE go from a nice to have to must have?
Yeah, so the thought of having angle of arrival support on a phone is kind of interesting. So what would that look like? Why would you do that?
Well, I think we would do it for better accuracy, right? I think, during my days of location, right, whether it's time, angle, just the more information you have, the easier it is to make an estimate, right? And so, if we have timing or phase information, all that's going to help on making the user experience better.
Yes. So this is a feature that could add a new feature for a new version of the iPhone that would allow you to kind of use it as a sniffing finding device, couldn't you? Because at the moment you have a beacon on a shelf, and you know that you're getting warmer or colder, but if you had a phone that actually knew the angle that the beacon was, you could start navigating through, you could parse through the big cold medicine shelf and locate the specific item that you're looking for and solve that problem, which would be amazing. It would be also very good for people that sell Bluetooth tags, which so I'm not averse to that as a use case.
Yeah, so I think I'm still I still firmly believe that we're going to see BLE go from a nice to have to must have. I think, we're seeing data points, right? On my side, I'm seeing customer use cases emerge that are going to embrace it. I think on the technology side, we're seeing the BLE, SIG, 5.1, AI, all that's pointed in the right direction. I think in the tag ecosystem, yourself included, right? We're starting to see a whole new generation of energy harvesting tags come down the pipe. All that's goodness. Yeah. And we're starting to see the indoor map ecosystem evolve, right? We're starting to watch indoor mapping evolve, which is kind of a key part for all the wayfinding use cases.
So what's happening in the mapping space from your perspective?
I think we're seeing two things, right? We're seeing a ecosystem of map vendors come to the market, right? These are your Jibestream, Locust Lab, Mapwise, those guys. We're also watching Google and Apple kind of work out their strategy around indoor maps, right? Google and Apple are starting to kind of sort out how they're going to handle indoor mapping. So I think it's still up in the air whether is indoor mapping going to be solved by an ecosystem of players like Here. Here just acquired Michello. How's that going to evolve over the next couple of years?
Fascinating. Well, this has been a great update conversation, Bob. Bob Friday, CTO, co-founder of Mist. Great insights. Loved hearing about your new technology, where you see the market evolving. So let's check in. Let's check in with you again next year.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. And hope to see you in the next conference.
All right. All the best.
Okay.
You had 3 songs before on your trip to Mars. You got another 3. Which ones would you choose, do you think?
I'd probably do Take It Easy, Eagles.
Well, you had that one last time, so you get another one.
Yeah.
You had the Beatles, the Eagles, and the Grateful Dead. I can't, and Take It Easy was the...
Okay, so this time it would have to be Pink Floyd.
All right.
Wish You Were Here, and Brain Damage.
Okay.
Creedence Clearwater, Have You Ever Seen the Sun? Or have you ever seen the rain?
Yes.
And then probably the other one I'm working on is, was it Van Morrison, Brown Eyed Girl?
Oh, fantastic. Well, those are great songs. Any particular reason why you would choose those ones?
Because those are the ones I know the best now.
Okay, very good.
I have plenty of time on the way to Mars. I'd be knowing me,
Yeah, you might. Your repertoire would probably expand significantly, but at least you'd be able to listen to those and you'd be able to model your performance on those. So, I'm full of admiration. I have tried to learn the guitar. People who've watched the podcast from my home have probably seen the guitar that is accumulating dust in the background. So the fact that you're actually doing it and you've stuck with it for 1.5 years is pretty impressive.
No, I will tell you, Steve, if I can learn to play guitar, anybody can learn to play guitar.
You're very modest.
That's the challenge I got when I got into it. One of my friends told me, hey, if I could do it, anyone could do it.
Very good.